Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. My name is Kat and I make houseplant videos here on Good and Planty. If you just so happen to absolutely love this video, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, or following me on Instagram. All of these things help me grow my channel like a plant. So the weather is getting warmer for a lot of us, and that probably means that you are either thinking about fertilizer or dusting off the fertilizer that you have at home. Fertilizers can come in a lot of different products, a lot of different forms, and there's so much that you can learn about fertilizer. But I just wanted to share my personal experience with fertilizer and some of the basics that you should know as a houseplant owner, whether that is one plant, 10 plants, or 100 plants. On Instagram, I asked you all to send me some of your confusions and questions surrounding fertilizer, so I'm trying to like weasel in some of those answers into this video. If you want to be a part of future informational videos, please feel free to follow me on Instagram, and who knows, maybe I'll answer some of your questions. I have a lot of information to cover, so I want to just jump right into it. Let's start with why you need to fertilize. I think it's a pretty accepted part of houseplant care. Everybody knows that you should fertilize, but I just kind of want to break down why, because I think it gives a good foundation for the information we're going to talk about later. As plants grow, just like how humans grow, we need food and nutrients to make us big and strong. Houseplants need the same thing. So as they're growing, they're sucking up nutrients from the soil. However, houseplants are confined to a pot, and therefore the amount of nutrients like in the compost and stuff is very limited. At some point, the plant is going to use up all of the primary nutrients found in their soil mixture. So essentially, when you're fertilizing, you are replenishing the soil with nutrients that they would otherwise get fairly regularly in the wild. That's it. That's why you need to fertilize. So another common question is, when do you need to fertilize? Like when do you know when it's time to fertilize your plants? My answer is not super clear cut. I'm pretty much gonna say whenever. I would just make sure that your houseplant is actively growing or kind of just starting to chug along within the growing season. If your soil already has a slow release fertilizer in it, and I'm talking usually about those little balls found in potting mixes, definitely let that run its course before introducing a new fertilizer to the mix. And this is gonna vary a little bit. Like, you can add worm castings to a soil mix with slow release fertilizer, but if you're using anything stronger than that, I really recommend waiting for like the 6 months or so that the bag usually recommends. At the end of the day, houseplants don't know seasons as well as we think that they do. They're not outside, they're not experiencing true seasons. They're inside with pretty regulated temperatures, humidity levels, light, etc. So I really recommend listening to them and following kind of their lead rather than looking at the forecast, paying attention to the seasons, and making your fertilizing schedule based on that. For example, my house is very poorly insulated, so the seasons are a little bit more obvious to my houseplants, especially those that are closer to windows. I do notice that the growth slows down during the winter months. However, if you're in a house, or if you keep your plants in a greenhouse environment with very, very regulated conditions, you'll probably notice that you can fertilize your plants a lot more often, and it's a lot less dependent on outside conditions. I did see some questions about nutrient deficiency and being able to tell when to fertilize in that way, but unfortunately, I think that that is a pretty large topic with potential for a deep dive, and I just don't want to cram it in this beginner guide. I will not be answering that question in this video. Sorry. Okay, and lastly, for when to fertilize, do not fertilize if you need to like kickstart a plant that's doing poorly and it's very visibly not a nutrient deficiency. Again, that's a different video, and other creators I'm sure have covered these topics. But if your plant is declining because it has cold damage, or you know, like you underwatered it or something, do not use fertilizer as a medicine. That is not how you should use fertilizer at all. It's more of like a nutrient boost to kind of take your plant, your healthy plant, to the next level. Okay, for a big chunk of this video, I want to jump into NPK values and what they mean, and also you'll find in this section what plants need what fertilizer? Because that was definitely one of the most common questions. Believe it or not, me explaining NPK values is going to cover all of that. Now, if you start paying attention to your fertilizing bottles, you will probably see 3 numbers. For example, on this Espoma fertilizer, I'm seeing a 222 right here. And that's pretty much on all fertilizing bottles. You'll see those numbers, and those equate to the fertilizer's NPK values. The first number is always going to refer to the N value, otherwise known as nitrogen. The second number is always going to refer to phosphorus, which is the P, and the last one is going to be K, otherwise known as potassium. I always get the P and the K mixed up, so that's why I was hesitating a little bit. These 3 are all of the primary nutrients that your houseplants need to grow happy and healthy. Plants absolutely need other nutrients to grow as well, but these are like the big ones, basically. There is a lot of like science and research to be said and dug into when it comes to NPK and what each value does for your houseplants, but I'm gonna kind of give a very summarized and like need to know explanation for each value because I think that's just better for beginners and me. I don't really have the means to dig into nitrogen other than like a surface level. So let's start with nitrogen. Nitrogen is super important for houseplants, especially plants that you're growing for foliage. Nitrogen is really important for promoting a beautiful, luscious green color, like a healthy green for your houseplant leaves, as well as promoting photosynthesis. Again, this all comes down to science, but just take my word for it. You might hear that and want to just like load up on a nitrogen heavy fertilizer for your houseplants, but just keep in mind that the N is really good for foliage, but if you're trying to grow a flower or a fruity plant, that's where the phosphorus is gonna come in. And too much nitrogen can actually stunt the growth of flowers and fruits. So yes, phosphorus is good for the health of your plant's roots. It's good to help promote flowers and fruits. Obviously with houseplants, this is gonna be a little bit less common, but it's still important to keep in mind for houseplants like Hoya even. Okay, and lastly is the potassium, and the potassium is a little bit less clear cut. I can't really do a deep dive on potassium because I don't fully understand it, but basically you need potassium to just have like a very healthy, well-rounded, well-growing houseplant. It basically just contributes to the strength of your plant. So you might have noticed in previous videos when I'm talking specifically about Espoma, I call it a balanced fertilizer. And what that means is that the NPK values are all of the same amount. So this is a 2-2-2 fertilizer, meaning that it's balanced. When it comes to fertilizers, you'll probably see some fertilizers marketed towards specific kind of plants. For example, you'll see flowering plants or houseplant fertilizer, and that probably comes down to the NPK value of the fertilizer. So if it's like a general all-purpose houseplant fertilizer, you'll probably see it either be balanced or a little bit higher with the nitrogen. I saw, coming back to the Instagram questions, I saw a lot of questions and confusion surrounding what fertilizer for what houseplants, and doing research on your houseplant and matching it to a relevant NPK value is definitely the way to go when figuring out what fertilizer for what houseplant. I will be sharing what I personally do towards the end of the video. The one thing I will say though in advance is that I don't really see a huge need to fertilize cacti and succulents. That's just me personally. You absolutely can, and I have this, even though I'm not really sure like if it's super significant to use a succulent specific fertilizer, but you can absolutely fertilize them. I just personally don't see a huge need, and I don't really do it that often. The one last thing I'll say about NPK values is if you see like a dramatically high NPK value, that typically means that you're looking at a synthetic fertilizer, whereas like lower amounts like 222 Espoma, I can guess that it's organic, and it is organic as you can see here, because of the lower numbers. I'm going to share my personal preferences in literally just 1 second, but you'll see that I tend to lean, well, I typically use exclusively organic fertilizers. And that's just a personal preference, plus there's environmental bonuses. Okay, so that's all of the info I have on NPK values and trying to match your houseplant to the right fertilizer. And now let's share exactly what I do, my take on fertilizing my personal houseplants. You will see in just a second, take a very conservative approach to houseplants. It is one of the only areas in my life where I am conservative. That is absolutely not everyone's approach. That is mine, and there are multiple correct ways to fertilize, but this is just what I do. And I also noticed a lot of fertilizing fear almost in the questions that were sent to me. And I think that taking this approach is also great for beginners because there's a lot less risk involved and kind of removes that like fear barrier. The risks with going with a little bit of a heavy fertilizing routine is that you can actually burn the root system if you over fertilize, and in turn you will see some of your foliage crisping up. That's a good way to tell if you've over fertilized. And of course that damages the root system, which prevents future nutrient uptake. So again, if that makes you scared to fertilize, if you kind of ease yourself into a fertilizing routine with a more gentle approach, it kind of minimizes that risk, and you can always bump up your fertilizer, but it's really hard to, you know, salvage a plant that you might have burned. It's kind of like my fertilizing philosophy, but let's talk about how I actually fertilize. The first thing that I really want to highlight is worm castings. I've talked about worm castings a lot on my channel, and I'm gonna talk about it again. Here is Espoma's organic worm castings. You can use whatever worm castings you want. This is just what I use, and it is linked down below if you want to support my channel. I do mix the worm castings in with my soil mixture, so my plants already have like a base of some gentle good nutrients to soak up. And like I said, I try not to use soil mixtures with slow release fertilizing in it because it makes fertilizing a little bit out of my control, and I don't like that. I kind of eyeball the worm castings, to be honest with you, but I would say it comes to about roughly 10% of my soil mixture when I mix my own, and you can always amend pre-mixed houseplant soil with worm castings. Since it is so gentle, you don't really have to worry about mixing it with slow release fertilizers, about overdoing it. You can probably overdo it, but it's just like, it's a very mild fertilizer. So if you are stressed out, just go ahead and mix some worm castings into your soil mix. And sometimes I do top dress my soil, so I'll take like a little spoon or something and I'll just put like a little layer on the top of the soil, and I will water the worm castings in. I do that year round, by the way, so whenever I'm potting a house plant, doesn't matter when, I will put worm castings in. If a plant looks nutrient deficient to me, I will go ahead and top dress no matter what time of year it is, no matter if the plant is growing or not. I just go ahead and use the worm castings. However, when spring approaches, like now, and I notice my houseplants picking up, I will start to reintroduce my real fertilizing routine. So I recommend, basically all I'm gonna be talking about today are liquid fertilizers. I do have some of these sticks. Someone asked me about these little fertilizing sticks that some people use. I'm not a fan. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't like it. I think it produces waste. It's hard to monitor. It's not for me. I will be talking a lot about liquid fertilizers today. So if you have a liquid fertilizer, I recommend reading your personal fertilizer's bottle, and then honestly, even going a little bit less than that. In the past, I've used this fertilizer. I've talked about it a lot. It's Espoma's organic, all-purpose, balanced fertilizer, which hopefully makes a little bit more sense to some of you. And what I would do is I would kind of put like a little splash of it. You're supposed to use a capful. I try to do a little bit less than a capful into a gallon jug of water, and then I water my houseplants as per usual. Now I'm using LIQUIDIRT, so I'm a little bit less experienced with this product, but I've been using it for a couple weeks and I do like it so far. It seems very gentle. It has a lot of really good ingredients. I'll try to put the ingredient list right here, but there's like all different kinds of poop and manure and all that stuff. I like that I kind of get a bunch of different beneficial ingredients in one product. This is absolutely more expensive than this, so this is a little bit of a splurge for me, but it does last for quite a bit of time. Hi, okay, editing cat popping in because I really didn't like how confusing I made this next part sound, so I'm hoping to break it down a little bit better. basically for the liquid dirt in terms of measurements, when you first receive your liquid dirt packet, it will come in the bag that I showed, but it'll be a powder. So to hydrate that powder, you need to add 1 cup of distilled water, and that will create a concentrate within the mix. From that concentrate, you want to use 1 cap of concentrate per gallon of water. So you will then have to make that mix. And then from that mix, you're going to take 2 tablespoons per quart of water to actually water your houseplants with. So you will have a concentrate packet. You will then have that gallon mix, and then you will further dilute that mix to your watering can to then water your houseplants. And you can water your houseplants with that mix as much as every single time that you water. Personally, I am doing it weekly, but that is just my current take. It's kind of up to you. It is very gentle, as I've stressed like 50 times. Okay, back to the video. I try to top water when I'm fertilizing a lot because you can bottom water with fertilized water, but I think that it creates like a lot of wasted product and I don't really like that, so I do tend to top water when I'm fertilizing. So for me personally, I am lazy. I have a lot of houseplants. If I really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty and find the perfect fertilizer for each houseplant, I would go nuts. That is way too much money to spend, products to keep in stock, like things to notice. So I find that if I just have a more gentle, organic, forgiving fertilizer, I can use it across the board, and my houseplants are totally fine with that. They all love it. I do use this for all of my houseplants. The one other thing that I use sometimes is this orchid spray. It's really, okay, hello. It's by Miracle-Gro. A lot of you were asking me about my opinion on Miracle-Gro. I think it's fine as an introductory fertilizer. I don't think there's anything super wrong with it. I think that fertilizer a lot of the times is just fertilizer. Obviously, it's nicer to go a little bit more natural, but if you want to start with Miracle-Gro, that's fine. You can then upgrade. I think Espoma is a little bit of an upgrade. And then if you want to go hyper local, small business, like super organic, you can go with something like Liquidert. They're all different little phases, but all of them do give your plants a little bit of nutrition. Sorry, but looping back to the orchid fertilizer, I have used this in the past. I think that it's a spray, so you can spray your foliage. It's a I think those are called like foliar fertilizers or something. I've used the orchid mix on my Hoya because, you know, the intent is kind of the same. It's just you want them to flower. But I do notice that this is a balanced fertilizer, so I'm not sure if it's really like any better for getting your Hoya to flower. Using this, I have noticed more growth with my Hoya, but it has not flowered. So that kind of goes to show you that there is truth to NPK values. Do you really absolutely need this for your Hoya? No, I've actually kind of geared away from this and I'm using more of this on everything. There you go. That's just my personal take on fertilizer. Again, there are so many ways to fertilize, to the point of it being overwhelming and to the point that people don't want to fertilize and they feel completely lost within the fertilizing world. So I think that like my approach is almost like a beginner's approach to fertilizing, and I really like it. I'm not really changing this up anytime soon. I think that using a gentle fertilizer across the board until you're ready to like move up to more specific fertilizers is totally fine. And don't forget about your worm castings. We love worm castings here. Okay, hopefully that helped answer some of these common fertilizing questions. If I didn't answer your question specifically, I apologize for that. I wish I could include everybody's little question, but some of them were a little bit more niche and I could see them being entire videos on their own. So here we are. This is what I came up with. If you have additional fertilizing questions, please drop them down below and I will do my best to answer them as always. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more planty content from me. You can follow me on Instagram. You can like this video. All of these things help support me and I really, really appreciate it. With all that being said, I hope fertilizing is a little bit more approachable now. I hope you have fun fertilizing and it's not scary. And I will see you in my next planty video. Bye!